Life confronts us with the inevitable reality that individuals enter and exit our existence. We form attachments with people, create meaningful bonds, and frequently tie our emotional well-being to these relationships. However, what occurs when these connections dissolve? How do you manage the emotional burden when someone no longer holds the same position in your world, or when you discover they never shared your level of emotional commitment? You may wonder, how can I cease caring? Or, is it possible to truly disconnect emotionally without sacrificing part of who I am? Here is where Stoicism, especially Marcus Aurelius's teachings, provides us with guidance. The Stoics excelled at comprehending human emotions, not through avoidance, but by mastering how to control their influence over our existence. Emotional detachment doesn't involve becoming heartless or uncaring, but rather reclaiming the ability to respond with mental clarity and tranquility. In this piece, I'll walk you through 5 enduring Stoic principles for emotionally detaching from someone, using Marcus Aurelius's wisdom as our guide. This extends beyond mere theory. It's actionable guidance designed to transform how you interact with yourself and others. Principle 1. Acknowledge life's temporary nature. Marcus Aurelius teaches us, everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Regarding emotional bonds, we frequently hold on to our personal view of someone, constructing a story about their significance in our existence. However, the truth remains that all relationships are fleeting. One day you're connected, the next they're absent, whether through physical separation, death, or the gradual erosion of closeness. People depart. This may appear grim, but it represents the Stoics' primary principle of detachment, accepting impermanence. When you acknowledge that no bond lasts forever, you develop greater awareness of the present moment. Have you attempted to grasp a handful of sand while at the shore? The harder you clutch, the faster it escapes. This represents a fundamental law of existence. The more we attempt to own something or someone, the quicker they slip away. From my personal journey, I maintained a friendship lasting more than a decade. We exchanged everything: aspirations, anxieties, midnight discussions. Yet gradually, circumstances shifted. Despite my resistance, the gap between us widened. The emotional energy I had invested felt like chains binding me to someone who no longer returned the same bond. Only when I acknowledged that the friendship had reached its end could I finally release that emotional burden. Marcus Aurelius would have recommended the same approach. Embrace that endings are inevitable, and you'll experience less pain when they arrive. Principle 2. Control your emotions using logical reasoning. There's a common belief that emotions dominate us. You experience hurt, sorrow, and frustration. These responses arise naturally when you're emotionally connected to someone. But here's the difficult reality. Emotions aren't truth. They result from your thoughts, convictions, and interpretations of circumstances. Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics firmly believed in this concept. We aren't victims of our emotions. Our emotions are subject to our thoughts. Marcus Aurelius taught that the mind possesses authority over how we react to the world. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, he documented. Emotional detachment begins with understanding that your mind can control your emotional condition. Your thoughts regarding someone can create an emotional tempest, or they can calm that same storm. Consider experiencing a breakup. You're emotionally devastated, reviewing discussions mentally, over-examining every aspect, questioning, why did this occur, or how could they recover so quickly? The Stoic approach involves redirecting that attention. Rather than allowing your emotions' dominance, inquire, what are the actual facts? How might I view this situation differently? You must select thoughts that liberate you from emotional pain, not thoughts that intensify it. Consider this momentarily. When events unfold, when you disagree with someone dear, feel overlooked, or experience disappointment, what's your initial reaction? You interpret the circumstances and assign meaning, but it's not the incident itself causing emotional chaos. It's your perception of it. Marcus Aurelius documented, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, indicating your emotions directly reflect your internal conversation. Picture sending a sincere text message to someone important to you, perhaps a friend, romantic partner, or relative. Hours pass without response. Instantly, your mind begins working frantically. Did I say something inappropriate? Are they angry with me? Do they not value me? With each passing moment, emotions intensify. First mild concern, then irritation, possibly even worry or anger. But what represents the actual situation? Is their delayed response creating your emotional storm, or is it your interpretation of their silence? The Stoic approach challenges that automatic emotional response with logical thinking. What are the facts? The reality is they haven't replied. Everything beyond that remains pure conjecture. Instead of permitting your emotions to spiral uncontrollably, you pause. You acknowledge that your feelings of worry or rejection aren't grounded in reality, but in your personal thoughts. Marcus Aurelius's guidance. Question your thoughts. Don't simply accept them as truth. I once experienced this exact scenario with a dear friend. We had been discussing something significant, and suddenly they ceased responding. Initially, I thought little of it, but as hours elapsed, I began feeling growing unease. Perhaps they're upset with me, I reasoned. Maybe I said something wrong. By evening's end, I had convinced myself the friendship was nearly destroyed. My emotions were chaotic: worry, guilt, frustration. But when I paused to examine what was actually occurring, I discovered something vital. Nothing had happened. My friend had simply become occupied. When I contacted them calmly the following day, they responded normally, completely unaware of the emotional turmoil I had created for myself. In a moment of insight, I recalled Marcus Aurelius's words: focus on what's within your influence, your thoughts, your actions, not the result or another's feelings. By redirecting your mind, you'll learn to release emotional disturbance. If you're still watching, please like and comment below with a sign you've observed in your personal relationships. Your observations might help others identify similar patterns and develop healthier connections. Initially, negative visualization might appear unusual or even counterproductive. Why would someone deliberately imagine losing something or someone they cherish? Doesn't that simply create unnecessary anxiety? The reality is, this Stoic practice endorsed by Marcus Aurelius represents one of the most effective tools for emotional detachment, not by hardening your emotions, but by preparing your mind for life's unavoidable losses. The concept is straightforward yet profound. By envisioning worst-case scenarios beforehand, you reduce their emotional impact when or if they actually occur. This doesn't mean becoming fatalistic or pessimistic. It means training yourself to accept reality as it exists rather than as you desire it to be. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not disturb yourself by imagining the whole of your life's troubles at once. Rather, as each arises, meet it with calmness and self-control." Essentially, negative visualization develops resilience. Envision someone you're deeply connected to, a partner, friend, or family member. Now visualize your existence without them. Picture them absent from your daily routine. How does that sensation feel? Uncomfortable? Distressing? That's precisely the intention. The Stoics believed that by confronting the emotional discomfort of loss mentally, you diminish its power to devastate you in reality. I recall practicing this when my closest friend considered relocating overseas. We had been inseparable for years, and the prospect of them being across the world filled me with anxiety. But rather than suppressing that fear, I welcomed it. Daily, I would imagine life without their presence. I pictured myself continuing my routines, socializing with other friends, and discovering happiness in new experiences. When they actually relocated, I wasn't overwhelmed by sorrow or isolation. The loss still hurt, but I had mentally prepared for it, and that preparation made everything different. Another element of negative visualization involves recognizing that loss naturally occurs in life. Everything you treasure will eventually disappear, either through separation, change, or death. This isn't intended as morbid thinking, but as liberating insight. When you stop expecting permanence, you cease feeling entitled to it. And when you stop feeling entitled to something, the fear of losing it decreases. Consider relationships, for instance. Most people, when entering relationships, assume they'll last indefinitely. We don't prepare for endings, but reality shows that nothing is guaranteed. Rather than clinging to false hopes of permanence, the Stoic method involves appreciating what you possess while you have it, knowing it will eventually transform. This perspective shift can be incredibly liberating.
I once maintained a relationship where I constantly worried about it ending. The thought of losing that person consumed my thoughts. But when I began practicing negative visualization, I stopped obsessing over controlling the outcome. I imagined life after the relationship, and although painful to consider, it reminded me to appreciate the present moment. When the relationship eventually ended, I found myself more prepared than I ever imagined possible. The true benefit of negative visualization is strengthening your inner resilience. By repeatedly imagining worst-case scenarios, you develop internal stability that can't be easily disrupted by life's changes. You discover that regardless of what occurs, you'll be fine, and that represents the ultimate form of emotional detachment, not from life, but from the illusion that circumstances must remain unchanged for happiness to exist. Principle 4. Concentrate on your sphere of influence. One of Stoicism's fundamental teachings, and one of the most empowering realizations you can embrace, is recognizing there are elements within your control and elements beyond your control. Regarding emotional detachment from someone, this distinction becomes absolutely essential. Why? Because much of the suffering we experience in relationships originates from our desire to control things we simply cannot. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, constantly emphasizes focusing solely on what falls within our control, our thoughts, actions, and responses. Everything else, other people's behavior, situational outcomes, time's passage, lies outside our control. The more you attempt to control what's beyond your influence, the more you'll suffer. Emotional detachment, therefore, isn't about coldly distancing yourself from others, but rather releasing your attachment to outcomes you cannot determine. When you're deeply attached to someone, whether a romantic partner, friend, or family member, it's natural wanting to influence their feelings toward you. You want them to care about you as you care about them. But the harsh reality is, you can't control their emotions. You can't force someone to love you, appreciate you, or treat you as you deserve. The only controllable element is your response to their actions. Take a moment reflecting on when you tried influencing someone's feelings or behavior. Perhaps you went to great lengths winning someone's affection, or exhausted yourself proving your worth to a friend who never truly valued you. How did that experience feel? Likely, it left you frustrated, anxious, and powerless because you were pursuing something beyond your control. From my own experience, I was once in a relationship where I felt constantly trying to maintain stability. Regardless of how much effort I invested in planning dates, sending thoughtful messages, or being emotionally available, it seemed like I was always trailing behind. They would withdraw, and I would try harder. It was an endless cycle of anxiety because I was attempting to control their feelings toward me. When I finally began embracing the Stoic principle of focusing only on what I could control, my own actions and self-worth, I started releasing the anxiety. I realized I couldn't make them love me more or treat me better. All I could control was my response, and in that moment I chose to detach. The relief from releasing that emotional burden was tremendous. One of the most liberating actions you can take is embracing emotional autonomy. The idea that your happiness, peace, and emotional stability don't depend on someone else's behavior or feelings. When you place your emotional well-being in another's hands, you surrender your power. You become captive to their actions, moods, and decisions. Imagine being in a friendship where you constantly feel overlooked. Your friend doesn't make time for you as before, and you feel neglected. Naturally, this hurts, and you might find yourself pondering what you did wrong or why they've distanced themselves. But here's the crucial point: their behavior lies outside your control. The only thing within your power is choosing how to respond. Do you want to spend energy pursuing someone who doesn't value you, or focus on nurturing relationships and activities that bring joy and fulfillment? When you redirect attention to what you can control, your own emotional state, you begin reclaiming your power. You no longer wait for someone else's validation or attention to feel complete. Instead, you create your own emotional balance, independent of external circumstances. In my personal life, I've experienced friendships where I realized I was granting too much power to how the other person treated me. If they were distant or dismissive, I'd feel unworthy. If they were warm and attentive, I'd feel valued. It was an exhausting emotional roller coaster, but when I started applying Stoic principles, I made a deliberate decision to stop connecting my self-worth to others' actions. I began focusing on cultivating my own emotional well-being, independent of their behavior. This didn't mean caring less. It meant stopping their actions from dictating my inner peace. The ultimate objective of emotional detachment isn't indifference, it's acceptance. Acceptance that life is unpredictable, that people are unpredictable, and that despite wishing we could control everything, we cannot. What we can do is accept circumstances as they are, rather than as we wish they would be. Imagine dealing with a breakup. You feel lost, hurt, and overwhelmed by the situation. Your mind races with questions. What if I had acted differently? Why did this happen? Can I repair this? These are natural questions, but they're rooted in a desire to control something that has already occurred, a desire to reverse the outcome. Instead of tormenting yourself with what-ifs, the Stoic response is accepting the situation's reality. Marcus Aurelius writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacles we encounter aren't hindrances, they're opportunities for growth. When you accept what's outside your control, you stop wasting energy trying to change the past or influence others and start focusing on how to move forward. During one of my life's most challenging periods, I experienced the sudden and painful loss of a relationship I believed was solid. Initially, I was consumed by the desire to understand why it happened and what I could have done differently. But gradually, I realized the only path to peace was accepting the situation as it was, not as I wanted it to be. I couldn't change the past, and I couldn't control how the other person felt. What I could control was my reaction to that loss. Instead of clinging to what was gone, I embraced the present reality and found strength in acceptance. Principle 5. Consider the broader perspective. When you're deeply entangled in relationship emotions or difficult situations, it's easy losing perspective. Stoic philosophy, especially through Marcus Aurelius' teachings, encourages stepping back and reflecting on the grander scheme of existence. Aurelius frequently emphasized that our troubles, fears, and desires are merely fleeting moments in time's vastness. By adopting this broader viewpoint, emotional detachment becomes more manageable. Ask yourself significant questions like, will this pain matter in 5 years? Or, does this person truly define my entire existence?
Shifting focus from immediate emotional turmoil to higher-level reflection helps you realize that much of your distress connects to temporary circumstances. Stoicism reminds us that no single person or event should possess such power over our emotional well-being. When you're overly attached to someone, it's easy making them your universe's center. Your happiness and self-worth can become intertwined with their presence or absence in your life. But stepping back and seeing the bigger picture reminds you that life is ever-changing, and relationships, however intense, are just one part of your journey. You are a complete individual with your own path and experiences. During the intensity of a breakup or emotional conflict, grasping this perspective may be challenging, but reflecting on your life's larger scope helps you understand that you've survived emotional storms before. Life continued, and so did you. Think back to previous relationships or moments when you thought your world was crumbling. Those wounds healed, and you became stronger and wiser. This is life's natural rhythm. From my own experience, I once endured a painful breakup that felt like my world's end. For weeks, I fixated on the past, feeling like the future had lost its brightness. But with time, I allowed myself to reflect on the bigger picture and realized that this person, while important, wasn't my life's defining moment. They were part of my journey, but not my entire story. By zooming out, I saw the relationship as just one chapter in a much larger narrative, and I began to emotionally detach. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, emphasize all things impermanence: relationships, emotions, and situations. Everything in life is transient, and what truly matters is how we respond to these inevitable changes. By reflecting on the bigger picture, you cultivate inner peace, knowing that life will continue flowing regardless of your temporary attachments. This broader perspective allows emotional detachment, not because you stop caring, but because you understand that clinging too tightly to fleeting things only leads to unnecessary suffering. Emotional detachment isn't about apathy. It's about understanding that life is much larger than any single person, relationship, or moment of pain. By seeing your life as a vast, interconnected web of experiences, you free yourself from the tunnel vision that emotional attachment can create. Ultimately, emotional detachment isn't about shutting down your emotions or closing yourself off from the world. It's about building resilience and gaining control over how you respond to life's inevitable changes. The Stoic path offers not a quick fix, but a way to inner peace. By embracing impermanence, mastering your emotions through rational thought, and reflecting on the bigger picture, you will discover that emotional detachment is an act of self-liberation. So the next time you feel yourself gripping too tightly to someone or something, ask yourself, do I control my emotions, or do they control me? Emotional freedom awaits those who dare to let go.